Ever found yourself in an empty living room, contemplating all the possible furniture arrangements? Selecting the ideal setup can be a daunting task, given the countless possibilities for furniture arrangement out there. From understanding furniture scale to navigating walkway clearances, here's everything you need to know about designing the perfect living room layout. The first thing to do is to determine the primary function of your living room. Broadly speaking, there are two main functions living room can have: either TV watching or conversation. Many living rooms embrace elements of both, but they usually emphasize one function over the other. If your main priority is watching TV, arrange your seats towards the television. In contrast, if the space is conversation focused, arrange your seating to face each other for a more intimate ambiance. I've encountered many setups where individuals who enjoy TV have their sofas facing away from the screen, and also ones where the arrangement revolves around a TV despite no one using it. To avoid mistakes like these, define your living room's purpose right from the get-go. Then, consider trying one of the many layouts I'm about to go through. This approach will help you steer clear of common mistakes in living room design. If you have a medium to large size living room, or more of a formal living room, a layout with two sofas perpendicular to your focal point, whether that's a TV, fireplace, or painting, is perfect as it is very symmetrical and helps facilitate meaningful conversations. In this layout, you can do it perfectly symmetrical with two identical sofas, or you can mix it up by having two different sofas but with a similar build, color, or material you want it to relate to one another. If you need more seating, you can add in two armchairs opposite the focal point. Sometimes, it can be difficult to reach the coffee table from the armchairs, so you may choose to put a side table between them. Consider opting for matching sofas and two identical accent chairs for this layout, unless you have a strong vision in mind. If you're unsure but want to mix things up, choose two versions of the same sofa, but each in a slightly different color for a harmonious yet diverse look. You can also play around with the cushions instead of the sofa, so it doesn't look completely identical but won't be out of place either. A layout with a sofa and two armchairs opposite is the perfect for those who have a small to medium-sized living room and want a space that facilitates both conversation and TV watching. The way the armchair is set up will totally depend on your preferences and the layout of your living room. The location of your focal point isn't as important with this layout. It can be perpendicular to the seating like the previous two layouts, or the focal point can be opposite your sofa. I find that putting the focal point opposite your sofa is best if you like to watch TV, as the other two focal points may not be as comfortable as you have to put your body on an angle. If you do put your focal point opposite your sofa, make sure the armchairs have a low profile, otherwise they will block the view of your TV. It is also not a bad idea to remove the side table as well, for an unobstructed view. It is a much more casual layout than the previous two, especially if you have the armchairs on an angle. If you want a more formal feeling, have matching armchairs positioned parallel with the sofa. One mistake I often see here is overcrowding the space with an oversized armchair. If possible, make sure the width of two armchairs combined is less than the width of your sofa. If you find that your living room is a high-traffic thoroughfare, you may consider replacing the coffee table in the center with a visually lightweight or movable side table, so it is easier to navigate around the space. You can also add in two ottomans perpendicular to the sofa and armchairs. This is a great option if you want more seating without the visual weight of two additional chairs. This layout is a slight variation on layout 3, but one armchair has been removed and the remaining one is angled in the corner. It is suited for small to medium living rooms for conversation or TV watching, but it is perfect for those who spend a lot of time in front of the big screen. This layout is ideal for spaces that are slightly smaller than average, or ones that need more walking space or breathing room. If you're in a particularly small space and want an even more space-saving option, I'll suggest replacing the armchair with an ottoman, or opt for a chair that is visually light. In smaller layouts like this, don't be afraid to use standard size furniture. You don't have to use a small love seat for your sofa just because the space is small. Sometimes, using really small furniture can make a small room look even smaller. Of course, measure everything to make sure the pieces will fit and that it won't look overcrowded. The rule of thumb is that your sofa should be roughly 2/3 the wall it is up against. The simple sofa and coffee table layout is perfect for small apartments or for small living rooms and is highly suited for TV watching. Depending on your space and preference, you can opt for a standard or a chaise sofa. One suggestion here is to not get hung up on forcing the back of the sofa to the wall, especially if the room is a bit wider and there will be considerable distance between the TV or focal point to the sofa. It is okay to move the sofa to the middle of the room as long as you allow ample space to navigate. Since this layout is so simple, you may want to dress up your coffee table with interesting books and decor, or decorate the surrounding area to make it a point of interest in the room. If you have a slightly bigger living room, you can incorporate an L-shaped sofa for lounging instead of a regular sofa. L-shaped sofas work best with layouts like layout 3 and 4, where armchairs have been added to balance out the design and also facilitate conversation. You can add in an angled armchair in the corner opposite the L bend of your sofa, or have two armchairs opposite the sofa with a side table between them. This depends on how much seating you require. If you're going for two armchairs, I'll suggest having two different designs for visual interest, but matching chairs work fine as well. This layout also works well with sectionals for larger gatherings in large living rooms. As sectionals are generally much more square in shape, I'll suggest only having one armchair across from the sofa's corner seat, but really depends on the length of each arm of the sectional. Another option for a sofa and armchair layout is to put singular armchairs perpendicular to the sofa instead of in groupings of two. This creates a U-shaped arrangement that is perfect for narrow and long living rooms, which you'll typically find in many townhouses or semi-detached homes. One sofa perpendicular to the focal point with two armchairs opposite and a coffee table. This layout is a less formal alternative to layout 2. If TV watching is more of a priority than conversation, move one sofa in front of the TV and have the other perpendicular to it. This means you can lay down or sit in a more comfortable way while watching TV than what you would be able to do in an armchair. If you have a large window in your room, you may consider replacing one of the sofas with a daybed or bench to open up the space, especially if there is a beautiful view. The three sofas or U-shaped sofa layout is fully conversation focused. I'm personally not a big fan of it, as I think it looks quite flat, especially compared to the three armchairs layout that I'm going to explain next. This design is very square, so I find that it usually works best in formal living room spaces. One sofa facing the focal point, two perpendicular armchairs, one armchair angled in the corner, and a coffee table. This final layout is one of the most popular for large living rooms. It is much less formal than the previous layout, but still provides you with plenty of seating for conversation when you have guests over. Place a sofa in front of your focal point and have two armchairs perpendicular to the sofa and a third armchair angled on the opposite side. You can add or remove side tables and armchairs depending on the size of the room. This layout frees up a bit of space in the room as we're swapping out all the sofa for armchairs. It is not as structured or as boxy as the previous two, which often works better in more casual open-plan spaces. With this one, it's important that your accent chairs don't match. The two side-by-side armchairs can match, but the third one on the other side must be different. You should also mix up materials in fabrics and table finishes. Pay attention to the table shapes as well, and vary them if possible. The layout will look one note if all your tables are circular or all are square. Before you commit to any layout, you have to first think about the flow. Can you easily get from the sofa to the doorway? Does your layout have clearly defined walking paths? Can you easily walk from room to room? The tricky living room layout in Jonathan's home from the first episode of Design Dilemma highlighted the importance of prioritizing traffic flow. With 5 evenly spaced doorways around the room's perimeter, finding a layout that wouldn't impede movement was quite challenging. One of the solutions to this dilemma was to use curved furniture and a round rug, which allowed them to create a central conversation area and ultimately better traffic flow. If you haven't watched the Design Dilemma episode yet, I'd highly recommend you do so to see how we fix a lot of layout issues in spaces around the world. Hopefully, you can take some of these ideas in your own home. Choosing a layout for an open plan area may seem more difficult than a traditional closed plan, but really it's no different. My best tip is to break up the space into mini rooms by utilizing furniture and rugs to zone the spaces. Zoning with a rug is the easiest and most effective option. Rugs create a natural border around the sofa and armchair, which separates the living room from the rest of the room. You just have to make sure your rug is wider than your couch for this to be effective. Around 4 to 6 inches wider on each side is ideal. For standard one sofa with 1 or 2 armchair layout. Anything more than that, you need to make sure either A, all the front legs of your sofa and chairs sit on the rug, or B, all of the legs of your sofa and chairs sit on the rug. The next thing to consider is the orientation of your seating grouping in relation to the rest of the room. For those who want their living and dining area to be more connected, 2 sofas facing each other with a perpendicular dining table works well as it opens up the space for conversation. You can also divide the space with a rug. This layout is perfect if you entertain or often have large gatherings. Alternatively, you can have your sofa parallel to your dining table. The back of the sofa will form a natural border between the living area and the rest of the space. There are also cases where the back of the sofa is just by the entry and there's no place for a table to drop your everyday carry. A sofa table or console placed behind the sofa can be a great way to divide the 2 spaces, while having a surface to place everyday items on. Here's another trick I like to use when planning. Make an imaginary line that acts as a barrier between the living and dining space. If you have an L-shaped living room, naturally the wall acts as a barrier, which is where the dining area should end. You can see this being applied in 2 of my previous projects, and this will allow you to find the constraint on the right dining table shape and size. In addition to generally knowing where each piece of furniture is going in your living room, you need to make sure that the scale and distances between each piece is correct. Here's a few general rules. You want about 30 to 36 inches between large furniture pieces so you can easily walk around your space without having to shimmy between objects. If your space is really small, you can get away with gaps of about 20 to 24 inches. But ideally, you want 30 to 36 inches. This is your ideal circulation space. When it comes to the sofa and coffee table, the distance between is typically 12 to 16 inches, as you want easy access to books and drinks. Getting the right height and scale for coffee table is also important. Typically, aim for a coffee table that's half to 2/3 the length of your sofa. For an L-shaped sofa, that is half the length of the horizontal portion. Also ensure that the table's height is no more than 4 inches taller or shorter than the top of your sofa seat cushions. Even though I haven't put walls in my layout examples for illustration purposes, it doesn't mean that all of your furniture has to float. Sofas can be placed against a wall facing a TV or fireplace. However, some people pull it out about 3 to 5 inches for a bit of breathing room. At the end of the day, what is most important is having a room that fulfills its intended purpose with a good flow to move around the room. Always plan out your layout thoroughly before making any big purchases. Many people do a sketch or use floor planning app, but if you're unsure, you can always pull out some blue painter's tape and block out potential pieces on the floor. This is really helpful as you can walk around the space and get a much better feel about what works and what doesn't. You can also test out all your walking paths to make sure the traffic flow is right. There's definitely more than just functional layout and good flow to a well-designed space. Layering pieces of different shapes, color, and texture while making sure they work well together, utilizing what you already have, as well as defining your own unique decorating style that is often a combination of many different design styles. These are all important steps that I'll go through in depth in my upcoming course. My aim is to allow you to confidently decorate your home in a way that speaks to your own personal style and needs, without getting overwhelmed by all the choices and working within the constraints of your budget. Less abstract theories, more practical advice that you can apply and execute. If this is something that interests you, get in the waiting list to be the first to know when it is out. And there'll also be special offers for all the early birds. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to check out this video on how to elevate your living room. Otherwise, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.